Okay, now that I've placed most of my features and I have them not perfectly cut out, as you can see there's little bits that need to be transitioned. That's going to be the next phase. Here I have to transition this rhino head into more of an interesting hand. The colors aren't matching, but the placement is good. I have the placement of most of the features I want all there. And the idea is you get everything placed so that then you can actually turn off your sketch and kind of see how your silhouette is communicating and if it has everything that you wanted. Now I also have to keep myself true to the inspiration. And if I look back at my inspiration, there was an element that I'm missing still, which is this lava back, which is pretty interesting. So I'm just going to quickly place that last part in, since most of the placement I did of features I didn't record just because it takes a while to find the reference and to place it. So I found these interesting ones. I liked this reference, which was from a children's science project. So I'm going to shrink it down, roughly place it just to review as a smart object taken right from the desktop or right from your folder. I'm going to kind of shrink it to a little bit bigger than the size I think I might need. I'm going to place it by hitting return, and then I'm going to just roughly lasso around it. I especially like the kind of spikes in the shadow back here behind the lava. And then I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate it. And then I'll erase the smart layer. It automatically rasterizes the duplicate. Then I can move that duplicate up on top of everything, and I'm just going to work on top of every other layer right now. Just click and drag. And then play with placing this in a way that makes some sense with the shape of what I already have. Also, don't be afraid to transform, right? To shrink and to warp and to distort, as long as the anatomy is still coming through. So I love this back edge, and I'll kind of clean that out. And I'm not going to go for like fine-tune erasing yet. I'll do that at the end once I kind of figure out what I'm doing, but I could just use my lasso and get a little bit closer so I get a sense of the silhouette that I want. It's all about shape and silhouette. Delete that out. But I need a lot more interest here, though that color and that smoke rising is very nice. I've got lots of other reference. Here's from real volcanoes. And lava flows. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of spiky rocks there. But it might be nice to get a little bit of that texture in there. It's almost like a texture fill just on an individual element. So what do? I have the smart layer. I'm going to select around it loosely. I'm going to try to capture a lot more of this smoke than a lot of this edge. That kind of backlit silhouette edge. Duplicate it onto its own layer. Erase the smart layer underneath. Move this in. Feel free to transform it. Change its shape fit my purpose, as long as it doesn't interfere with the anatomy. But because I might use it as a texture fill, I'm going to take it at a lower opacity. I just want to get a sense of it like that, and I might even use a different kind of blending mode, like overlay. You see, it adds a lot more texture to it, a lot more depth. Soft light, that's nice. Pin light, no, that's not great. So soft light I'm liking. And I can play with the opacities. Let's make that pretty bold. So now my lava is not just a flat pool of red, it's actually got these kind of streams on it, and I've got a lot more texture in the rock than if I didn't have that one overlay. And of course I can transition it into the shell underneath. So let's keep going. Let's see how far we can push this. I've got this explosion of flames. Well, let's see, I like this one a lot. This is the rough rocks. Just kind of looking into a cave. I thought it'd be neat if it actually looked like this shell of his was cracked. And so inside of it, you see that there's kind of boiling lava keeping him warm. And that would be an interesting way to show it. And I'd always intended to use more rock textures. So it all makes sense. Instead of so much turtle shell, I can start augmenting with some of this rock. Shrink it down. Wow, I love that silhouette, the spikes going out the back. I might have to use some of that. So we find inspiration from lots of different sources. I'll place that. I'm not even going to change it too much. I'm going to see what I can do with it. I'm going to put it underneath some of the others. Let those textures come through. There's that overlay on it. Kind of warms it up, makes it look more like it's glowing. And do I want to use this at all anymore? I'm just not sure. Maybe I'll use it as an overlay. Yeah, so now it's really feeling like it's glowing hot from there. So there's so many ways you can go about these creative decisions of how to place things. But it's definitely, I think, more interesting than just the shell itself. So I am going to be using something like that. And maybe at the end I'll be able to add some special effects, some flames, some smoke coming out of it. All right, so I've got all my features placed. Now I've got to clean them up and start transitioning them. So let's start with this rhinoceros head. It can be nice to use the move tool and auto select. I have my sketch now turned off, but that allows me to immediately find the layer I want just by clicking on it with the move tool. And I'm going to use my eraser, and I have it at 100% opacity, fairly hard. And at this point, not only am I erasing out the background, but I'm also deciding what shape I actually want to use. So as I'm erasing here, I'm also going to be making decisions about where do I cut in and transition into the arm that I've already created. How much of these shadows do I need? And to keep it safe, I like this spike here. I'm just going to cut out the background. And then I'm going to use a softer, lower opacity eraser to transition the texture into the arm. So I want that to look like a plate, not so much like the mouth of the rhinoceros. I can also just erase the eye, and transition it in to what's already underneath on the layer, which is a similar texture. And I've already changed, I've already chosen its placement and its size and its angle to suggest kind of this big, weird hand shape, just like this one is more club-like. So now the name of the game is transitioning elements so they start to fit together and getting the shape right. Now these legs, also from a rhinoceros. Let me use auto select to find that layer. Let me start trimming around those. First with a high opacity eraser, fairly sharp. And it's really great when you can use magic wand or even quick select to do this. But I have leaves and lots of different values that make it just easier to do it with the direct eraser. But when you have a reference with a flatter background, that's why people will shoot on green screen for special effects. It's a lot faster just to use the magic wand to select it. Now, I'm not in love with these feet. They're not in very sharp focus. And so that might be another element I bring in. But I want to try to get everything else working first. Because I might use big rock piles for the feet. I think that might be really nice. As long as the anatomy makes it look clear about how they would work. So this is all about cleaning up your pieces and starting to transition textures just in their placement. Other edges. So around this club hand here, some green edges showing. On this arm here, that seam is a little too strong. I cut that back. And now this gives me a great opportunity for transitioning again. So a lower opacity, a much softer eraser. Start mixing the two layers together. Use one seam or one crease in this case to flow into another. One shadow to flow into another. I do want them to separate. I want them to feel like different folds, almost like flaps of fingers. But in putting these textures together, the lower opacity and the bigger and softer my eraser, the smoother that transition will be. Now, other things I can do is I can take this layer behind and I can do direct adjustments like levels, a very simple one, and darken its midtones a little bit. Or limit its highlights so it's not quite so different than the thing I'm transitioning into it. And then I don't think I need these solid black shadows anymore either. This is a good opportunity for me to use the magic wand. Oh, but it's a little too strong though. So instead, I'll just rely on my good old eraser. 100% opacity, a little bit harder, a little bit smaller. Transition it. It's really fun using a kid's drawing as inspiration because I never would have come up with some of these really crazy shapes on my own and strange silhouettes. So because I'm not doing this for money, I don't need to particularly worry about wasting time. I just want to be really enjoying whatever I do. And so the difficulty is always knowing when to stop, because this is for pleasure. You know, when I've gone too far, or what's worth working on. So this can actually take up a lot of your time when you're making some of these decisions of what to work on and how specific to be, how careful to be. But I wouldn't worry about spending too much time because every minute you spend practicing this stuff, you're getting better and better. So it's just helping you learn. Now the problem with transitioning is you need to have something behind it. So if I just erase from here, that doesn't help me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal some of this texture from this arm, use my lasso, take a big chunk of it, duplicate it, Command J, use the move tool, move it over, move it on top, and then ultimately move it behind.